What's up, folks? Sean the Average Angler, and we are back out in the garage. As you can see, it's cold. Not that cold, but it's chilly. We went from 100 degrees a few weeks ago to this morning when I walked out the house, it was 36. So we are in that transition from fall to winter. Temps are dropping fast. We're going to have a big storm supposed to hit tomorrow. Well, the next 3 days. Some areas are supposed to get a lot of rain. So we are in that transition period where water temps are going to drop fast and too fast. Some places might get a little muddy, depending on if the rain hits or not. Cold, dropping temperatures, and muddy water do not mix. That's tip number one. Try to find cleaner water. Which in our lakes here in California typically isn't too much of a problem. Yeah, so anyway, that's tip number one. Today we are going to touch on the ever popular A-rig and its role this time of year when temperatures are dropping fast. And we're going to talk a little bit more about where and what I'm going to choose for this. And I've got an assortment of A-rigs up here that I'm going to go over for you. I'm no A-rigging expert per se. It's not my preferred method to fish. One reason early on why it wasn't necessarily my method of choice is because they're a pain to cast. That said, you get the proper rod for it, and all of a sudden that changes, okay? So I've got a couple here I'm gonna share with you. And this one, I've actually been itching to share with you, and that is the Fiber Series Irod 754 Magic Stick, okay? 7'5", heavy, and the reason I've been wanting to share this with you is the price. 30-ton graphite, $109, okay? It's a freaking bargain. And this is, it's called the Magic Stick because it's got several purposes, like a lot of iRods do. But right now on here, I have braid, and I'll change that for the A-rig. I don't like throwing a braid on my A-rig, but this thing, I mean, I'm really impressed, let me tell you. I would not hesitate to recommend the Irod fiber to anybody, okay? Some of them are 109, some of them are 99. Very sensitive, light rod. I didn't weigh it, but anyway, this is one of the rods I will use. Other is this one here, Irod Crusher Series. You all know how I feel about the Crusher Series. I love it. This one's called, it's a 784, and it's the Croaker Crusher. Yep, Croaker Crusher. And this is, an A-rig is listed as one of the techniques for this rod, okay? 7'8", 3/8 to 3 ounce, 10 to 20 pound test, or braid 50 to 70. Again, I've got braid rigged on here right now. But this is gonna be my A-rig rod, and this one is a little bit more moderate than the previous aforementioned 754 Fiber Series. Both will toss them just fine, okay? And then I will add that I will also throw the 764 in the Gen 3, which is a moderate taper 7'6" rod. It's called the junk fishing rod. That one I will throw if I'm throwing lighter rigs. And I think you're gonna see here in a minute that I don't get too crazy with my A-rigs, okay? Here is one of my rigs from way back in the day, and this was from the very start. And back in the day, we got these from High's Tackle. High's Tackle made them, and this was called the Crazy 8. Okay, 8 arms, got my 2 bottoms with hooks, and then the long center one with hooks. And this is really, I think, one of the more important parts of the whole package, to be honest with you, is your hook and head. Just like fishing an underspin, we don't want to overpower the bait. So I like shorter shank hooks, okay, because most of the time when I am fishing in a rig, I tend to fish a little shorter baits. Now there are times I don't, and I'm going to share that with you. But anyway, this rig is very effective. The problem, and I think the reason why so many people went away, let me set that aside, from fishing so many baits on a rig is because they tangle. Okay, you make this long cast, you work the cast in, you get in, your baits are tangled up. I just don't think they eat it very well when the bait's tangled up. So one of the rigs I do like to throw a lot is this one here. Okay, it's a 3-arm rig. This is a Yum Umbrella 3-wire. Okay, very simple, very basic. And this rig, I really like to throw more like that, bend wise, because this is my bottom bouncing rig. All right, that's tangled up. I'll deal with it later. Anyway, this is my bottom bouncing rig. I cast it out, I let it drop to the bottom, and I want to fish it on the bottom. I want it bouncing along the bottom, swimming, but I want to feel the bottom contact. This rig has proven to be very, very effective for me. Okay, it's also, for some reason, a little more snag resistant. And if you wanted to, on that bottom rig, you could put a weedless setup. I don't find that the hook is the thing that catches when these catch. It could be the head. Anyway, everybody's got their theories. I don't snag much with this. That's really my whole point, okay? So I like this one a lot. It's my bottom bouncing rig. Getting into your standard stuff, and we'll go over that in a minute. I like the Hog Farmer stuff. You know, the Tactical Bassin guys designed these. And you'll see 3 different ones here. When in actuality, they're all the same. I believe this is just the flex rig. And then they just have different configurations. 5-wire 8-blade, 5-wire no blade, 5-wire 4-blade. Now, typically, if I'm throwing blades, I prefer the 4. The 8, as you can see, I own it. I will throw it at times. This is probably going to be an overcast, windy day where the fish are up, moving around. They're actively feeding because of the weather. I'm going to fish that up in the water column. Okay, I'm going to cast it out, start retrieving it back. Get up on a point where the wind's blowing in, cast up onto the point, slowly retrieve it back. It may pendulum down slowly as I'm retrieving it, but it's not going to be bouncing bottom like the other rig. Plus those blades are going to give you a lot of lift. Okay, as those blades are spinning, they're going to keep the thing from sinking as fast as, say, this rig would with only 4 blades, or like this rig would with no blades. This 5-wire, very effective, right? You really don't need more than that. They're more manageable. They don't get overly heavy that way. These things are already expensive enough, okay? The 3-wire bottom bouncing rig, I'm going to fish a lot. For me, this is all those other days, other than what I just mentioned, for the blade bait. Pretty much any time it's not storming, okay? So around where we're at, that's quite often when the fish are being lazy, they're on the bottom, they're just hanging out, not doing a whole lot. That's the time where I want to throw it on the bottom. Okay, now where am I throwing it on the bottom? I pretty much limit that to just a couple places, to be honest with you, and I could be missing the boat. Like I said, I'm no 8-rig expert, but I tend to do pretty decent at catching big fish on these. First of all, points, okay, the obvious one. It's the same as the other rig where you're fishing it up in the water column, fishing down in the water column, same thing. Just on the bottom instead of up. My favorite place to fish them is guts. I like to get back in guts, okay, small coves, arms that kind of come in like this. I like to get right down that gut, throw it right down the middle. Not all of them are good for this. You need to find the ones with the right depth, get in those depth areas, throw it out there, let it get to bottom, slowly retrieve it. At Clear Lake, a shallower place, I honestly just like to find the depth that I feel the fish are holding in, which unfortunately a lot of times seems everywhere, or all over the place. I do believe they hang in certain depths, and this is a rig I like to use for that. A lot of times it's 12 foot, 12 to 15 foot, somewhere around there. And I will go to a bigger bait. With a bigger bait doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to use a heavier head. You'll see this Picasso, I think it's called a Picasso schoolie head, but it's got a longer shank on it. Still a light head. Here's one without the split ring. Okay, they're fairly long. And then the other head I like a lot is this one. But these are all going to be for a little bit bigger baits. You'll notice my heads are all small. I would rather throw lighter heads and have to wait for it to sink. It hangs up less that way. Okay, and like I said, these are expensive, so you don't want to be tossing your money around. A couple other rigs, and look, these have all worked fine for me, and these ones are inexpensive. Picasso schoolie rig, 5-wire, Picasso bait ball extreme, which really this one's not that extreme. It's a 3-wire, but it has the or dummy baits up here. Rather than blades, you can put on a few extra baits. Again, fairly inexpensive. The Flash Mob. Look at the size of those blades. This is one that creates a lot of commotion. Not really something I'm gonna fish during the winter time nearly as much. And then I have a ton of those 3-wires, okay? Like I said, these are my favorite for bottom bouncing. It tends to be what I do, especially in the winter time. The stormy days are just further and farther between, but I will use that 5-wire for throwing it up in the water column, the Hog Farmers. These are very inexpensive, low teens, I believe. These I've all had for a while, okay? The Hog Farmers I bought last year. Remember, folks, buy stuff up when it's on sale, okay? So your Black Friday sale comes up here next week. Buy it, buy a handful of them, okay? Save yourself some money. All right, now the baits I'm going to use are going to be fairly simple. 3.3, 2.8 to 3.3 Keitechs. Okay, on pretty much all of this, unless I'm somewhere like Clear Lake. Okay, then I'll go up to like a 5.8 on that 3-wire. I don't know where I set down the live 3-wire. The exception to throwing the 3.3s is this here. Okay, that's a 4-inch bait. You'll see pretty narrow overall. Got these ribs back here where that tail kicks really well. Okay, this is a Ratt thin swim. This color's called Smoke Shad. They just came out with some new colors. Ratt thin swim. I'll put these down in the video description. They will be talked about again tomorrow. Okay, they have all sorts of colors. Now, one reason I really like these is one, the swim's different. Okay, I think I keep reiterating throughout my videos the importance of something different. The Keitechs are great baits, and they get bit. But I would say that pretty much every fish in the country has seen these hundreds of times. I still use them. Okay, one, because they have all the sizes. Now I mess around with some other baits too, but for the most part, when it comes to my A-rigs, the 3 wires, I'll experiment more with baits than I will with the other ones. Mostly because you get too big a bait on there, they start to tangle. I don't want to deal with that. Wasting cast means wasted time, and I don't want to waste my time, all right? The biggest thing to me, again, is pairing the proper head to the proper bait. And then having a rod, one, to be able to throw the bait sufficiently, and two, be able to set the hook and get the fish back in the boat after he bites, all right? Now, I have gone down to smaller rods. There's been times on spotted bass lakes where I will go down to 14-pound test on a smaller A-rig and throw it on that 764. It can be very, very effective. You can do that on Clear Lake if you don't mind donating equipment. We've all hooked the catfish there. Catfish love A-rigs. So guts, points, I don't want to jip you guys out of where I'm throwing these. And I'm going to throw it around cover. Mostly like floating docks. If I'm at Clear Lake, I'm going to throw it around floating docks, under and through docks, on the higher docks. Probably one of the #1 spots for throwing the bladed or 5-wire is along walls, okay? Edges, anything that's got an edge, right? You got a wall going into deep water, it's a great area to be throwing an A-rig, all right? They're in every lake. They may not be quite as obvious. You'll have to look around, but there's always those banks that drop off steeper. Those are great areas to parallel with an A-rig. Over the tops of islands, humps, those kinds of things. Also, don't forget saddles. Throw that A-rig through the frickin' saddle. Look, these can be very, very effective baits. I prefer to do what we're going to talk about tomorrow when I can. But there's times where if you're not doing this, you're missing out. You need to have some of these on, and that bottom bouncing rig will get fish to bite at times that won't bite anything else, all right? If you're into A-rigs and haven't done that bottom bouncing rig, give it a go. I think you've been missing some fish. Thank you for leaving them for me. I'll take what I can get. Sean the Average Angler, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Well, we got one of my favorites.